Alright YouTubers, good stuff. It's Londononion back with another class review and guide for Defiance 2050. And in this review we're going to be discussing the Combat Medic class. Now, there's always multiple ways to use a given class, and consequently anything I say is debatable and to be taken with 2 grains of salt. Our main focus will be on the class skills and how the combination of skills can best benefit the user and their weapon loadout. Alright, so the combat medic is like the immune system, the lungs, or the beating heart of a given body. The combat medic has its role plainly stated in the title. They are the main means of restoration and maintenance while still having an effective offense. Anyone that plays Apex Legends can easily understand the combat medic as Lifeline. So after experimenting and evaluating the different skills a combat medic can use, there does not seem to be much of a polarization of skill sets or playstyles with compounding effects throughout the skill tree, unlike our other class reviews. So the format of this review will be relatively one-dimensional, somewhat like our Assassin class review. Technically, no class is locked into any particular loadout, but for the purpose of consistency, the class build will be constructed with the assumed loadout of LMGs, pistols, or both. This choice will be explained later on in this review. So our first skill is the Healing Bot. The Healing Bot follows the combat medic around and rapidly replenishes one's shields or armor and health, as well as their allies for a maximum duration of 40 seconds and a cooldown of 40 seconds. This is essentially the medic's best friend and their main means of keeping not only themselves alive, but especially their allies. As effective as the bot is at healing, it cannot be summoned indiscriminately. If one is under heavy fire, particularly with explosives or just aggressive enemies, there is a good chance that the healing bot will become destroyed and potentially leave one vulnerable when expecting a health boost. Our first tier of skills consists of Recover, Savior, and Motivation. Recover reduces one's cooldown for self-revive by a maximum of 15% every time one's healing bot heals an ally. This is the ultimate contingency to any circumstance provided there are allies to heal. Additionally, this perk incentivizes healing one's teammates as much as possible. As a medic, you should be the last one to become incapacitated, if anything. Savior grants a maximum defense buff of 20% from incoming damage to both the medic and ally upon successfully reviving the ally for 10 seconds. An excellent perk, and eases the difficulty of picking up a teammate under minor to moderate fire, and aids their survivability upon revival. At the same time, there is not much urgency in picking up allies as fast as possible, as the death meter takes a substantial amount of time, meaning one can simply take their time when attempting to save an ally. The only time this changes is in PvP or co-op based circumstances, where strategy and offense is dependent on all teammates remaining on their feet. The stakes are otherwise just not as high. Motivation grants a 40% increase in reload speed for the medic and nearby allies for 5 seconds upon killing an enemy, and comes with a 30-second cooldown. This skill, although helpful, is probably the least valuable of the 3. The buff only lasts for 5 seconds, and reload speed does not seem to be much of a deciding factor in most circumstances concerning survival and becoming incapacitated. Splitting the numbers for this tier also won't yield very significant effects. For this tier, I would say Recover is the best investment. Now, for our first junction, we have Protection Spike and Inspire. Protection Spike provides a defense boost by a maximum of 30% for 15 seconds within a stationary radius and has a cooldown of 50 seconds. There are several applications of this skill, whether one wants to use it to aid in reviving a fallen ally, provide a buff for themselves and teammates, or compound bonuses with other classes, such as placing it next to the Artemis turret for the Engineer class. There's really many ways one can use this thing. On a minor note, the spike can unfortunately be destroyed, under similar circumstances to that of the healing bot. Aggressive enemies, explosives, you name it. However, the defense buff also applies to the healing bot, which incentivizes using both at the same time. Inspire creates a maximum damage buff of 20% within a radius for 10 seconds and a cooldown of 45 seconds. The application is essentially the same as the protection spike, except it does not benefit the healing bot at all. It is difficult to say which one really is better, but given the role of the medic in comparison to others, there is more logic in buffing defenses for you and your allies, as well as the healing bot, as a medic, as opposed to offense. I give the edge to the protection spike. Our next tier of skills consists of Light Machine Gun Dampen, Pistol Tactician, and Bot Supplier. LMG Dampen increases one's accuracy with LMGs by a maximum of 20%. This perk is the main reason a medic would have for using LMGs. Now, generally, the accuracy of LMGs is on the low side, but there are already modifications that can aid with this. Pistol Tactician increases the critical damage of pistols by a maximum of 20%. My evaluation of this one is similar to LMG Dampen, however, I would say that critical multipliers go a bit further than accuracy, especially when dealing with tough enemies or bosses, where that critical damage can be the difference between an enemy dying quickly or them having greater chances to put you down. LMGs, after all, should not be used for far-range shooting, and depending on the foes one is facing, a pistol with higher critical value can be a lot more effective than an accurate LMG. Bot Supplier replenishes a maximum of 40% of one's ammo reserves upon the healing bot healing an ally. At first I found this one to be quite interesting and rather convenient, especially with arc falls and bosses where sustained fire is required and taxing on ammo. At the same time though, much more often than not, ammo is rather abundant in Defiance as long as there are enemies to eliminate. Even if that isn't the case, there is bound to be an ammo box in the area. Out of the three, due to what I value in a weapon, I would prioritize Pistol Tactician, but it is best used with a pistol that has a substantial critical value. Otherwise, even a 20% increase won't be very significant, in which case then, I would just simply say Bot Supplier is the better option. Our next tier has Hasten, One for All, and Bot Empower. Hasten increases move speed by a maximum of 20% for 5 seconds upon a kill and comes with a cooldown of 20 seconds. Again, this is one of those less significant perks that has very little bearing on one's survivability. Not to mention, it comes with a cooldown, minimizing the amount of time one's speed becomes augmented. One for All grants the ability to revive all allies up to a 40-meter radius upon reviving a single ally. I actually really like this perk, and seems to play into the role of a combat medic. It is, however, a very niche skill, and is only really applicable in team-based gameplay. Additionally, all players have the ability to revive themselves at least once, meaning that there will be very few situations this skill can be used to its greatest potential. Bot Empower, upon healing a player, grants a fire rate buff by a maximum of 25% for 5 seconds. A helpful skill, but the time frame is so short for a player to take full advantage, and depending on their choice of weapons, it may not have much of an effect at all, such as if one is using a sniper or a rocket launcher. Out of the three, the best skill, in this Onion's opinion, would be the One for All. The other two just seem too insignificant and short-lived to have any significant effect. At least with One for All, a medic has the potential to keep an entire team alive with a single revive. Our final junction consists of Revive Spike and Ego Refresh. So Revive Spike already has the explanation in its name. Upon laying down the spike, any incapacitated ally close enough can revive themselves, and it lasts for a maximum of 25 seconds. This effect also applies to the medic and makes for a perfect last-ditch effort if one is close to falling despite alternative efforts. Almost like a second ultimate survival contingency. It can even be used when reviving an ally as a safeguard in case one goes down attempting to pick up an ally. Ego Refresh reduces activated ability cooldowns by a maximum of 70% for the medic and nearby allies. The skill is less reactive and more proactive in that it gives a player an enhanced ability to use their healing bot and spikes all over again. This can compound with one's healing bot if they wish to speed up their recover perk and ultimately have a second chance at a self-revive. Both the Revive Spike and the Ego Refresh can achieve the same thing, but they just do so differently. In my opinion, preventing one's demise under all circumstances cannot always be done, and everyone can use a self-revive every once in a while. I would rather have a safety net with mediocre guardrails than strong guardrails and a mediocre safety net. That is just me though. Both skills can be useful. I do, however, have a preference for Revive Spike, as I also think its application is a bit more versatile for reviving teammates. And that is what I think is the most ideal build for a combat medic. For those who had a hard time following along, my build is Recover, Protection Spike, Pistol Tactician, One for All, and Revive Spike. The role of the medic is to keep the team, as well as themselves, standing while supporting in whatever other way they can. So, moving into this Onion's opinion, when I first got into Defiance, I knew I would love the Assassin, and for those that have followed my other reviews have probably come to understand that I am more of a defensive player that likes to minimize chances of going down over inflicting heavier damage. So, logic would dictate that the medic should have been a tie, if not my first choice. After playing with this class long enough, I do see a difference in my survival, but that is just about it. I can survive, but my offense feels mediocre. Additionally, the medic also feels obsolete, like there is very little room for them to shine on a team or in a large sustained battle. Every player has the ability to pick themselves up at least once within a given time frame, making the combat medic more of a minor convenience than a recognized addition. Some of the skills are interesting, but it felt like a good portion of them were small, insignificant team buffs that would have very little bearing on the survivability of one's allies, and there seems to be less of a focus on healing and moreover a support type role. Anyone who has seen my Engineer class review may understand what I'm talking about. That class is more oriented towards supporting one's team in alternative ways, and the medic seems to do the same thing, but almost to a less significant extent. If anything, Crusader classes would appreciate the medic most. Everybody else is generally capable of being independent, as they aren't required to be too close to their enemies to be effective. In this Onion's opinion, the medic class falls just short of the passing line, but I still had fun with it. Otherwise though, that concludes this review. Thank you so much for watching, and you can continue on with your life.